Hello, welcome to a watercolor painting tutorial for HomeWell Care Services. My name is Lyndsey McElreath. I am a painter and a tattoo apprentice, and I came up with this small watercolor painting for us to do today.
So this is a bit larger than like postcard size. It's a pretty simple painting to do, only 4 colors in watercolor and a little bit of black and white acrylic paint. So I'll be going step by step on how to do this painting. And the good thing about this painting is that everybody's is going to turn out different, and not everybody's is going to be the same. And we're going to allow the medium to kind of do its thing for this piece. So what you're going to need and what you've been given should be a piece of paper, some paint brushes. You'll need a small cup of water, which depending on the size of the cup, you might have to change your water periodically. If you feel like your brushes are getting too muddy, you should be given a set of watercolors and 2 small containers of acrylic paint. Some additional supplies that you might need or want, if you have somebody there to help you or you have stuff lying around, is a pencil so that we can draw in very quickly a line for the mountains. And because this is a watercolor painting, which does require some dry time in between layers, I have a blow dryer here, and you can, in between layers, if you don't have the time, I mean, you could sit and sip some coffee and wait a little bit and come back to it. But if you blow dry through some of the layers, you can speed up the process a little bit. So let's get started. So what you're going to do to begin is draw a line, a horizon line essentially, for the mountains. And they can, it can really be done any way you'd like. So I'm going to follow what I did on my painting and lightly sketch in mountains. So I might do like 3 and kind of have it taper off like that. So we're going to leave this area open and start painting the sky. This eventually will be using black acrylic paint to mask that out. So starting with the painting, another thing that I like to do, if you have some scrap, is to have paper on the side to test out what your colors are going to look like. So watercolor, really, it's a water-based medium, so how much water you use determines how much pigment comes out. So for example, I'm going to dip into this red and test it on here. So this has a lot of water on the brush, so the color is really light. But another thing you might need is a paper towel to blot off that. So now I'm going to dry off my brush, and I'm going to dip it then back into the paint, and it's going to have a different effect. So the paint is now darker because I have less water on my brush. So in terms of doing the sky, you can do this in multiple ways, but we want to go from the lightest color to the darkest color, and we want it to kind of look like the sun has just set. So I'm going to start by dipping my paintbrush in the water and wetting this area that's right near the horizon line. Keep in mind that with the more water and paint that you apply to the paper, it's going to kind of buckle, so that's normal. If you have masking tape or something available, you can actually tape down the painting. It's still going to buckle, but so after I wet that area, I'm going to go in with this orange. And what I'm going to do is press my brush into this area. So when you press your brush in like that, instead of doing strokes, you kind of get different areas that there's some dark and some light, and I think that the variety looks really good with this painting. So I'm going to keep dipping in there. Every time I dip in, my brush is losing water. So if I need more water, I'm going to dip that in there, dab it off a little bit, and go back. But we're going to be doing this in layers, so we're going to go really light at first and go up from there. So we're going to bring this orange up like a quarter of the way. But once we have somewhat of a flat color down, we're going to go up to purple. So we're going to go into that purple, and we're going to bring that right next to that orange. So the colors are going to be light at first, but we're going to layer them. So essentially what we're doing is just creating a base. So you're just going to put that purple on top. And I'm doing this dabbing motion, and it gives, it's abstract, but it gives a good like effect for the sky, gives it that like kind of celestial type thing. So we're going to bring that up to about there. And now we're going to go in with the blue. So I'm going to start that blue right next to the purple and press it. And you can kind of mix the colors together, and when we do another layer of this, some of this stuff's going to blend in. We're going to pretty much repeat this process. But we want to pack as much color as we can, but don't be frustrated if you can't get it super bright right away. I feel like these paintings are good when you give it some time, let it dry or blow dry it, and then put another layer down. All right, the blue is gonna be the largest part of the sky, and we're going to put some black kind of in the edges and around the painting, which kind of gives it like night has just kind of begun sort of situation. All right, so now I'm going to take the black watercolor, sorry, not the acrylic, and I'm going to concentrate this black on the edges. So it's good if you have a piece of paper underneath it when you're doing this, but I'm going to blot this in the very edges and around the corners of the painting. The GoPro camera goes. So we're just taking that black and kind of framing what we did here. And with another layer, this is going to blend in a lot better. But this is good for now. In terms of watercolor, the first layer you put down is kind of like a flat. It's The paint's not opaque, so it does take a little bit to build up, which is okay. It's the reason why I like watercolor is it's slow and forgiving, and you can kind of take your time and enjoy what you're doing. So I'm gonna pound a little more into the edges here. So this is a pretty decent layer for this painting. I'm going to take my blow dryer very briefly, and it can be on a low setting. You can put it on high heat if you want. Just make sure that the setting is on low, and you're going to dry the painting. If you don't have a hair dryer or you don't have anybody to help you, just give it like 15 minutes, just to let the paper dry as much as you can so we can put more colors into there. Blasted at the end. Okay, so now I've dried the painting for a little bit with my blow dryer. It's not 100% completely dry, but it's at a pretty good place where it can take some more color. So I'm going to start applying the colors in the same order again, but we might want to use a little bit less water when you go into the paint. The paint does need water to activate it, but what I would do for the second layer is take your paintbrush full of water, fill the area with water, kind of mix it up, and then take a paper towel and take some of that water out of your brush. So now there's a lot of water in here, but less on your brush. So when you go in, really kind of dig it in, you'll get a ton of pigment. So now we're going to start back at the horizon line and start putting that color in. Gotta switch my brush for fun here. Gotta put that in. And you can use whatever brush you'd like, whatever feels good for you, whatever you enjoy using. With smaller brushes and more like detail type stuff you can do the bigger the brush is, the more area that you can cover. But yeah, painting's all just about, like, it's not about it looking perfect. It's not about making, you know, museum quality stuff, but it's just about taking time to make something and enjoy doing it. And there's really no right or wrong way to do it, as long as you're like enjoying yourself. So keep that in mind when you're painting. I know this is a difficult time for everybody right now, and there's not much we can do, but if you can do something small each day that you enjoy to kind of make yourself happy, you know, we'll all be in a better place. It's good to be calm and stay calm, and I feel like painting is pretty good for that. So I'm gonna put as much color in as I can. I'm gonna cover as much surface as I can, so if you see any whites, just do your best. Bring that color up. Now I'm gonna go in with the purple again. So I'm gonna fill that up, drag some of that paint, and I'm gonna start right there and put it in there. So I'm mostly doing that, a dabbing kind of motion. And I'm also kind of blending into the edges, but just taking my time. Yeah, the more you overlap the colors, the more seamless it's going to kind of look. But, you know, the sky is not perfect, so do it to your heart's content. All right, so there's that. Now I'm going to go in with the blue. And we want to really put as much blue into this as possible. So if you want to bring some down into that purple, that's totally cool. We want to put as much like blue into this as you can. But just eyeball it. If it's easier to, you can also draw in some guidelines, like a line here for that or there for the purple, but I feel like it's better to not think about it and just kind of do it, and you'll see it fall into place, if that makes sense. So I'm going to play back and forth a little bit with the middle of this painting. So I'm going to go in with equal parts of that purple and blue until I feel satisfied. And what you can do too, which actually would be pretty nice, is if you want to put a little bit, so it's not so harsh going from yellow to purple. Again, whatever you feel, you can go in with a little bit of red kind of in the middle there. Gives it a little bit more of like a seamless transition. As seamless as you can get. Watercolor is very free, but so I'm going to go in now with the black again, and I'm going to do the edges. I'm going to actually move this piece of paper just so I can get it really nice. I'm going to move this piece of paper under my painting so that I can kind of do this get those edges and not worry about ruining my sketchbook there. So yeah, I'm gonna keep dabbing this. Mostly dabbing with this whole thing. You can, alternatively, if you feel like it, or you have extra supplies around, or if you want to play around, you could actually use a sponge, like a clean kitchen sponge. If you cut it up, you could pretty much do this painting with that as well. But the brush works very well for it. There's plenty of very strange things that you can use for like watercolor paintings, like salt or so now I'm going to play a little bit with putting some blue into here and see how much of this I can kind of blend in. And kind of hug the edges too, because we want the darkness to kind of sweep in and kind of take the painting, so that when we put those stars in there, they'll kind of be right. So essentially what I'm going to do now, before I hit it with the dryer again, is I'm going to play around a little bit with the colors, try to pack as much color as I can into here, and then give it a full sweep with the dryer, or again, let it sit for another 10 to 15 minutes. But I'm just going to enjoy it and kind of like pack as much color as I can into there, so that when we put that white paint, the stars are really going to be super bright. Before I give it a minute with the dryer, I'm going to take the black and kind of push it around the edges a little bit to kind of further make that darkness kind of creep in. So you can pretty much do this until you think it feels right, which really can be at, you know, any point. I'm pushing that brush in there too, and that's kind of giving me some texture, which is totally fine. But you want if you can, the darkest parts in the corner, and then kind of blend it out from there. So if you want to dip your paintbrush into the paint and immediately take it in that corner, and then as you brush it out, there's going to be less paint on the brush. Be mindful when you're switching from a lighter color to a darker color to really try to wipe as much as you can off your brush, so that you don't contaminate that color, like from going from black to blue. So I'm going to go into that color again. So I'm going to go into the water real quick, dry that off, and go into there so I don't make that blue super dark. Okay. So I'm pretty happy with that, and I'm going to dry it more. Keep in mind, you can put as many layers into this as you want. In fact, the more layers you put on, the brighter that the stars and everything are going to look against the background. So I'm going to blow dry this off camera this time, and I'll be right back. So after another dry, this is where it's at. I'm going to push a little bit more black into the corner there, and then I'm going to go on to doing the mountain part. This will give it that part some time to dry. All right, that gives it a little more contrast. So now what we're gonna do is use the small container that you were given with black acrylic paint, and we're going to paint this part solid. We do want to use a brand new brush for this. We don't want to use the same brush that you did the watercolor with, just because, well, this is just a practice that I do. The acrylic paint dries up a lot faster. It's opaque. So what we're going to do, dip a little bit into the water, just very little, and we're going to take that paint and we're going to put it right on this area. We're going to spread it out. It's good to have this little piece of paper, if you have a little scrap paper under you, so you can really get the edges there. And you're just going to take that up and paint in your mountains. Again, it's okay if, you know, it's not perfect. You could, the more bumps and stuff it has, the better and more natural that looks. All right, keep spreading that out. All right, so once we have an even layer on here, we're gonna let this dry for a second and see if, once it's completely dry, if there's any areas that need to go over, because we want to make this as solid as possible. So again, take a small break or use your blow dryer. Keep in mind the acrylic paint doesn't need nearly as much time to dry as the watercolor. It's pretty fast drying. All right, so now while we wait for that to dry, we can work on the stars. So we're gonna take a completely new brush again and your little container full of white acrylic paint. And the easiest way to do this, I like to do stars in a few different ways. One way that I like to do it is take the back of your paintbrush and stick that right in, and then begin to make dots. And I like to kind of have them kind of gathered together and kind of spread them out. You know, when you first dip it in, that star is going to be kind of big, and then each star after that, you know, is going to be a little smaller. So I try to like cluster them, but there's really no right or wrong way to do it. Honestly, the more stars, the better. I'm going to leave this little area open so I can put a little moon in there. But I'm going to do a bunch of stars like this, and then I'm going to go in and do some little twinkling ones, which is optional. You can do whatever you feel. I also have a white pen, a white gel pen, which again, most people might not have, but you can do, if you do happen to have one of those, if you're, I don't know, maybe a scrapbooker or something, the little white gel pen would work really well for this. But you want to make sure this is as dry as possible, because if it's too watery, the paint will spread out, which we don't really want. But yeah, there's really no rhyme or reason to this. Just want to put a bunch in. I'm kind of just going with the flow. I'm clustering some of them so they sort of look like little, who knows, galaxies, something like that. I don't want to bring the stars too far down into the orange and red, but I can pretty much do that. So this part is just kind of like enjoy it, have fun, do as much as you'd like. And I mean, you could even like put birds in there, whatever you feel. Another option is you could put trees here, like little mountains, little trees on top of the mountains, whatever you feel. So after doing a bunch of those with the back of my brush, I'm going to do some twinkling ones. I'm going to dip. If you're going to do these ones, it's best to have a brush like this that's really, really tapered. So I'm going to go in there a little bit. And how I do these twinkling ones are kind of like crosses. So I can do a line across and then a line up and down. And those kind of look twinkling, those ones. So if you throw a few of those in there, if you're feeling fancy, if you're enjoying painting, gives it a little something, a little more depth, so that all the stars aren't, you know, exactly the same. But again, they don't have to be perfect, and you can do those as big or as small as you want. Put maybe a few next to each other. And if you want to do some super tiny ones, you can take that too. I just find it by using the back of the brush, it's a little more uniform, but whatever you'd like. Straighten these twinkly ones out. So once we throw those in there, this is my thing. I like to do a crescent moon. So I'm just going to freestyle it in there. Take the line, drag out a C shape, kind of at a diagonal. And take the paint and kind of fill that in. Taper it out. You can do a full moon if you want, whatever moon phase you prefer. But you want to get that as solid as you can. All right. Now I'm going to add some more little stars. And do it until you feel like you're happy with it. All right, that's pretty much it. If you want, you can sign the corner. But yeah, this is a really simple painting to do. Like I said, I did this one. I did one of these, whoops, last night and one of these today. So yeah, I mean, every time they're gonna look different. Everybody's is gonna look different. If you have the opportunity to work on this, send us a picture so we can see what you worked on. We'd love to see it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy, and I hope that everybody stays safe during this very different time. Thank you so much.